It is Tuesday, August the 7th. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to call this regularly scheduled meeting to order. Would the City Secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Araby.
Here.
Ellison.
Present.
Shield.
Here.
Villalobos.
Here.
Fogley.
Here.
Tenorio.
Present.
All right, all members present. We have a quorum. Next up is the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Tenorio.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 17th meetings.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilmember Tenorio. It's been seconded by Councilmember Villalobos. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 7-0. All right, next up is citizen comment periods with the City Council. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to come forward. We ask that you state your name for the record and that you direct your comments to the mayor and council and limit those comments to 3 minutes. I have 3 forms filled out so far. First is Mr. Mark Beck.
Should be only be hard to pronounce the first time.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. My name is Mark Beck, and I've lived in Kyle for almost 10 years. During that time, I've discovered the high kill rate at San Marcos Regional Animal Shelter. Of the 4,642 cats and dogs brought to the shelter in fiscal year 2017, 2,049 were killed. That's a 44%, and most of those were adoptable. Let's see. 1,078 of those animals came from Kyle. And it's just not right that almost half of those were killed. I'm not only a concerned citizen, I'm a member of Fix Hays County, a group of concerned citizens dedicated to achieving a 90% live outcome rate at the San Marcos shelter. Williamson County is already no-kill, and Austin is the largest no-kill city in the U.S. Hays County, on the other hand, has fallen short. We're asking the shelter to commit to a 90% live outcome rate through rigorous implementation of the no-kill equation, of which I have copies to hand out. Pledge to become transparent, beginning with posting pictures and locations of 100% of the animals upon intake. Implement low-cost and no-cost spay-neuter programs for companion animals and community cats. Kyle is currently paying $71,000 a year for our stray animals to be taken to the San Marcos shelter. I know San Marcos is asking for roughly double the contracted rate from Kyle, as well as Buda and the rest of Hays County in their new contract. Given the region's explosive population growth and lengthy number of years the current contract has been in effect, that's a reasonable increase. It's certainly a lot less expensive than building and maintaining our own shelter. However, the citizens of our city also deserve a better return on their investment. There are many proven life-saving strategies that can be implemented for free. For example, utilize more fosters and volunteers. If the county advertised this need, I'm confident people would line up to help. Reduce intakes by having animal care officers return microchipped or tagged dogs directly back home, bypassing the shelter. Seek grants from national organizations to fund spay, neuter, and life-saving initiatives. For example, Petco has these programs available. It will save taxpayer money by keeping animals out of the shelter. It costs about $215 to care for a cat or a dog's time at the shelter. The shelter only has about 15 animals in foster care right now. However, it's savings of about $8 a cat, $15 per dog per day if someone else cares for them until they're ready for adoption. And for every animal that's spayed or neutered, you can expect to save over $1,000 in future impounds. It's been proven that requesting donations from the community can also help offset costs. This happened in June in San Marcos with a starved puppy named River Faith. A GoFundMe page was raised $5,000 in a little over a week for emergency vet care. I hope you all feel the same way as I do, and I urge the Kyle City Council to take a closer look at how no-kill strategies can be implemented in San Marcos. I ask that you put animal sheltering on your agenda for future discussion and pass a resolution in support of no-kill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. All right, next up, I have Diane Herval.
Mayor, Council, I'm Diane Herval, live at 1528 Amberwood Loop. The first item I'd like to talk to is not on the agenda, if I might. As president of the Amberwood HOA, I'd like to publicly thank Dex Ellison, Daphne Tenorio, and many members of the staff that has been helping us work through some issues that we've been having with the Sunset subdivision and the construction of the roads and everything that's happening up there. Some of my members of the HOA are here today. They're going to speak in reference to some of the same issues that are continuing to happen. But some of the complaints have dissipated, and we really appreciate what has been done thus far. The next item I'd like to talk to you is on the agenda, which is item 10. I speak against this project because I'm really concerned, being in Amberwood, we've had to experience the blasting with Texas Lehigh for, I've been there since 2002. I don't go a week without a mini earthquake. Sometimes it's a major earthquake. I'm just a little concerned about a high-density project such as this is coming into that area. And I'd like to see something else there. And then the last item I'd like to reference is item 17. I'm not in total disagreement with the proposed changes. Just a little disappointed that a citizen review committee or something of that nature wasn't established to look at those charter amendments. Being a former council member myself, I don't disagree that you guys need a pay raise. I just think the going about it through an ordinance is a little bit convoluted. Might be something that could be an issue for some of your constituents, and I think there's probably a more transparent way of doing that. And I also feel the city manager should live in the city that he manages. I just think that's important. He's going to have to sell other business members on this city, and I think it's important for him to live here. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next up, I have Ms. Nikki Pringle.
First, I'd like to thank you for your time and give a personal thank you to Councilman Ellison, whose assistance is appreciated. He gets around. My name is Nikki Pringle. I think I already said that. I'm an 8-year resident of Brookside Estates, and I live on Arbonaut Drive. It runs adjacent to Tobias Elementary off of 150. I would like to make an appeal to reduce the speed limit on Arbonaut Drive. The posted limit on the street is currently 30 miles an hour. And for safety reasons, we would like to lower it to 25 miles per hour or less. I'd like to submit this petition, which I gained with blood, sweat, and tears in this 100-degree weather, with more than 100 current residents who use Arbonaut as their primary route in and out of the neighborhood. We feel that the current speed limit is unsafe for several reasons. First and foremost, the street runs adjacent to Tobias Elementary. Caution is the watchword whenever children, I'm a teacher. A large number of families walk daily to Tobias Elementary due to its close proximity. Also, there are 3 bus routes that travel this street twice a day for pickups, drop-offs. There are 3 in the morning, 1 in the midday, and 2 in the afternoon. The midday is a pre-K bus, so we have little guys crossing the street without benefit of crosswalks. There is only 1 crosswalk currently at the intersection of Caddis Cove and Arbonaut, which is fairly close to the school, but the majority of those bus stops and pickups occur further into the neighborhood. And again, like I said, this particular crosswalk doesn't coincide with any current bus stops. Also, a large number of young children under 10 years old reside in the neighborhood. That means playing in their yards, riding bicycles, skateboards, families walking through the neighborhood. This neighborhood is one of those where you see lots of people walking their pets. And when I went to do this petition, every time I rang the doorbell, a chorus of pets. So there's lots and lots of pets, lots of children, and we want to maintain, we want to preserve the safety and that quality in our neighborhood. Also, a high volume of vehicle traffic comes down our road due to the limited ingress and egress routes to FM 150. Arbor Knot and Four Seasons, that's it. There are currently 143 homes in Brookside. There are 54 homes built out in Creekside right now, with 129 pending. So that when it's all built out, that means 300 families, 300 homes are going to be using Arbor Knot. It's the path of least resistance. I'm not saying every one of those people don't wind their way through Four Seasons, but you know how human nature is, the path of least resistance. So Arbor Knot is getting a workout. Currently, there are 3 cul-de-sacs and 2 connecting streets that feed into Arbor Knot, Otonio Loop and Farrell Drive. And again, those are roads that can take you through Four Seasons, and but like I said, there are two roads in and out. A high number of large construction vehicles also travel this street daily due to Creekside development, which is only a third of the way through. Like I said, 129 houses are pending. There's also, in the 1200 block, there's a curving and narrowing of the road in conjunction with parked cars on both sides of the street, which creates blind spots and obscures the line of sight for drivers moving in both directions. An accident actually occurred on April 24th, this past April, in the morning when students are walking to school. A driver sideswiped a parked car, lost control, and then hit a tree in a yard, and the tree is gone.
Ms. Pringle, if you want to submit the.
Is my
can we
time
submit-
up?
It
Oh,
is,
okay.
but that's okay.
All
We
right.
definitely appreciate your feedback and bringing that to our attention.
Yes,
But
well,
I
I-
would very much like for us to get those
Okay.
signatures.
All right.
You can either give them to Mr. Earp or to myself. Either one would be fine.
Yes, ma'am.
No, thank you very much. All right, next up, I have Alfredo Garcia. Oh, I had you at the back. Yeah. Do you want to go?
Good afternoon, members of the council, mayor. Like you said, my name is Alfredo Garcia. I also live in Amberwood. I'm 1395 Amberwood Loop. I'm here to mainly piggyback on what Ms. Herbal stated earlier about the Sunset subdivision that's going on. I'm here to represent myself as well as some of my neighbors that couldn't make it out here today. Some of the complaints that we have going on, or well, I guess one of the big ones is that, I'm not sure if you guys have been out there, but the level of the new subdivision compared to where we're at, it's about 3 feet higher. So one of the concerns is like the flooding that's gonna come over to our side now. There was like a baby canal built in between, but my neighbor who has 20+ years in contracting work and construction and whatnot, he believes that it wasn't done correctly. Another thing is when they built that canal, they damaged some of our fences. And for the most part, they went ahead and filled the area behind the fences. Most of our fences just were left kind of floating in the air. But they went ahead and filled it with some dirt. The only problem with that is that they literally just did that. Filled it with dirt, they didn't pat it down. It's still loose. Strong winds can still knock down the fence. The other thing is that some of my neighbors told me that their fences weren't fixed at all. Let me see. That's one of the things, or two of the things. Other than that, pretty much the usual stuff. The noise is going on. Some of my neighbors are complaining about noise starting before work hours. For instance, today we had truck unloading rocks today around between 5, 6 a.m. My personal concerns are mainly the rattling that's going on. I'm not sure what they were doing back there, what they're drilling, but one day I can hear everything in my pantry rattling. All of the portraits that I had, things that I have hanging on my walls, everything was rattling. That concerned me as far as structure goes or the foundation of my house. The bigger concern that I have is the dirt that's flying around. Now, I personally have battled leukemia, and I've had a lot of health issues that follow on to that type of treatment. I had 2 bone marrow transplants, so my immune system is compromised, so I'm kind of concerned with all the stuff that's floating in the air. The second thing is that my wife and I are expecting a baby, and I'm really concerned as far as the condition of her pregnancy with all that stuff in the air. So I would like for something to be done in regards to that. The only thing is if you guys go out there or anyone goes out there, proper authority goes out there, we'd like to be notified, and I'm sure Ms. Herbal will let us know so we can go out there and meet with them and discuss any possible solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Appreciate it. All right, next up, Margaret Singer.
Greetings to the City Council. My name is Margaret Sanger, and I also live on Amberwood Loop. First time I've ever done this, so I'm a little bit nervous. I have to agree that there is something not quite right with the construction going on behind our homes. We've only been living there 6 weeks. When we first saw the house, to buy the house, the back fence was straight. We didn't see any dust in the air. We could look over the fence. Everything, seemed fine. And then layers started appearing in front of our eyes once we moved in and got higher and higher and higher. And now my daughter-in-law calls it Tatooine, as in Star Wars, because it's this very blank, deserted-looking area. And even that I think I can live with, but the dust is just everywhere. You clean off your patio every day, you sweep the patio every day, and it's just constantly there. And it seems like there ought to be something they can do, like water it down, to keep the dust levels down. I know road construction crews have to do that, so I would assume they would too. Also, when they dug in next to our fence, ours is one of the fences that pretty much fell down. It was a brand new fence. And they have tried very hard to get it back up again, and they've succeeded except for one little area that's sort of crooked and swaggy, but the rest of it is up nice and strong. However, I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm kind of nervous about it. As a matter of fact, I'm nervous about the whole project. I can't see how you can build something higher and how that dirt isn't going to be rolling down in my backyard first hard rain we have. So hopefully people are watching it, your city planning department and all are looking after it. I have talked to a gentleman there, and I think you all are keeping an eye on it, but I just want to make sure that you are. Like I say, I'm very nervous about the whole situation. I come from El Paso, Texas, where we cut into sides of mountains, and I've seen a whole side of a mountain go sliding down into somebody's yard. Actually, I had that happen to me once. So I just don't want to go through that again. And that's all. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. All right, next up, Ms. Daphne Tenorio.
Hi, okay, City Council members, you'll find a flyer in front of you. Last week, I was contacted by Life Unlimited Grocery, which is a partner of Central Texas Food Bank. They asked if there was any way that we could help do a grocery distribution. As we know, Hayes Food Bank is dangerously low, and kids are about to go back to school. So I agreed to assist, and I contacted Scott immediately, and our city manager said, yes, we'll do whatever we can to help. What they do is they go into the city, at Lockhart, they took 4 18-wheelers worth of groceries, and they distributed it to 2,400 families. So I saw this as a huge benefit and a need. I contacted Scott to see if we could use one of our parks. When I talked to the church, the parks are too small. So I contacted Lehman High School, who agreed to allow us to do a distribution of 6 18-wheelers worth of groceries to our citizens here in Kyle. Everyone is welcome to participate. No one has to qualify. It is completely done by a drive-through. The church is expecting to have 100 volunteers just from the church. I've reached out to the Rotary Clubs and some other nonprofit groups for assistance, and we're looking at starting the distribution at 10 a.m. Tomorrow there will be a meeting here at the Minerva Falcone Room. If any council member would like to come to the meeting, we will be talking about the logistics of what we as a city will be doing to assist with it. And I want to welcome anybody who would like to participate in this to come out on Saturday, August the 18th at 10 a.m. to Lehman High School. It is a complete drive-through, so the family comes to the first stop, registers, a sticker is put in their window of how many members are in the family, goes to the next stop, a distribution of food is placed in the trunk of canned foods, then it goes from cans to dairies to produce to meats. So then the family leaves with groceries. And with 6, this will be the biggest distribution the Capital Texas Food Bank has done, and we're real excited to be able to do this for our citizens. So I provided this, and Jerry will have these available for PDF for distributions to everybody you can think of. I think this is a great opportunity to help stock family pantries right before school starts. So I look forward to supporting this and hope you will too. Thank you.
All right, that's the last person that I have signed up to speak for citizen comments. Is there anyone else wishing to come forward in the audience?
Mayor, if I might. Oh,
Go ahead. If you wouldn't mind, after your comments, if you can grab one of these comment forms, they're right over there, and you can fill it out and give it to Mr. Earp or Ms. Vetrano. It's fine. Thank you.
Yeah,
Please
my
state
name's-
your name for the record.
My name is Joshua Hugo. I also live in Amberwood subdivision at 140 Maplewood South. And my wife sent me here to echo the same concerns others have stated. She's a light sleeper. I sleep through a lot of things, but she's been woken up numerous times before 7 o'clock by the construction out there. This morning, there was a giant dump truck dumping rocks about from the front of this room to the back, about that close to our back door, at 5:55 in the morning. That sort of thing has happened numerous times. So we just like the city to address that issue and make sure that they are complying with that noise ordinance and not doing that sort of thing before 7. And also the dust has been an issue with us as well. So just to second those thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Is there anyone else? Mr. Earp?
Mayor, I was just going to say, if it would please the council, I can offer some items into the record. I know there's an item to update this at the city manager report, but in the event that the citizens that are here speaking aren't going to wait that
Yeah.
long, I will just say that our staff received the first complaints on around the end of July, about July 26th or so. And that's when our engineering staff reached out to the on-site construction folks with KB. They met on-site, and they met again as recently as this last Thursday. And they went through the number of items that were brought forward by the public as far as the mounding of the dirt, which they're preparing for site development purposes, the dust, in which they have committed to add additional water trucks for additional dust control. Noise, they committed to not be working except between the hours of 7 and 7. So hearing that just happened this morning, anytime that any of the citizens see that has happened, if they would just please email or contact the city to let us know, we'll follow up with the builder. But when we were on site on Thursday, they committed to only be operating, after 7 a.m. As far as the fences go, my understanding is they did a full inspection of all the fences, and we're awaiting the report back. But they did say that there were fences that were damaged and fences that were repaired as a part of the process. If anyone still feels that their fence has not been properly addressed, then we need to know who that is so that we can get out there and have the inspectors look specifically at that particular address. I think that summarizes most of the points that were brought up. I'll be talking a little bit more in detail in the city manager's report, but those are the main points.
Okay.
The other thing to enter into the record as far as the Arbornaut concern, we received complaints about Arbornaut earlier this year, and we did a traffic study basically on that stretch where the police department set up counters like they do whenever we receive those items. The counters were there from April 24th to April 26th, so it was during the school year. They counted 1,374 vehicles in those 2 days, of which 60% of those were traveling below the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour, and only one vehicle out of 1,374 was what was considered a citable range. That's not to say that the speed limit isn't necessarily appropriate, it's just that we don't see it from the assessment that we did as far as speeding goes. Whether 30 miles an hour is appropriate speed for the pedestrian traffic or not is a whole nother matter. But if we decide to go down that path, there are state procedures in place if we were to lower the speed limit to 25 miles per hour, that we would have to meet those thresholds. In this report from the sergeant, he did identify the fact that there were numerous students who were crossing Arbornaut at Antano Loop, and they did suggest that we look at striping for a crosswalk there and putting in a controlled crossing, whether we add a stop sign for that purpose or look at some other type of control, and that's been sent to our Public Works and Street and Engineering divisions for review.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to come forward and speak on any item? Well, if you've already spoken, I don't believe you can come forward again to speak. So what we'll do is we're about to move through our consent agenda, and then we're going to go into executive session. And I'll have, before we do that, I'm going to have Mr. Earp talk to you before you come in, so that way y'all can discuss whatever you need to. All right, anyone else? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments period. Next up is our consent agenda, and I'm going to pull item number 8 from that. Is there anyone on the dais who wants to pull any other item? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Councilmember Sonorio?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Tenorio. It's been seconded by Councilmember Fogley that we approve agenda items 2 through 7. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up is agenda item number 8, and I'm going to move that we go into executive session on this item.
Okay.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Tenorio, Councilmember Ellison. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Mayor, to clarify, you have to state the reason that you're going into executive session, which in this case would be to receive legal counsel.
To receive legal counsel. You want to, do I need to say more? To receive legal counsel? That's the reason we're going in. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. It's been moved in second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. No action was taken during executive session. There will be action taken now on agenda item number 8. I'd like to motion that we reject the JKB Construction Company LLC bid and all bids and resubmit an application for, or resubmit requests for bids.
Re-advertise the, I don't know if this is on, re-advertise the project for bids.
Re-advertise the project for bids.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned by the mayor, it's been seconded by Councilmember Tenorio. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 9, an ordinance of the City of College continuing with curfew for minors under 17 years of age per section 23-23 through 23-30, titled Triennial Review, providing for enforcement, establishing criminal penalties, and setting an effective date. We do have a public hearing associated with this. This is Chief Barnett's items, but it's Captain Hernandez. This is statutory. Do you want to present on it, or it's just a continual, we're statutorily required to keep this going once every 3 years, but there's no changes to the curfew? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. It's now closed. Does anybody have any questions for Captain or a motion to make?
Second.
All right, it's been motioned by Councilmember Tenorio that we approve. And it's been seconded by Councilmember Ellison. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 10. This was originally postponed on 6/9/2018. First reading an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of rezoning approximately 14.36 acres of land from RS to multifamily R33 for the property located at 3400 block of Kyle Crossing in Hays County. This item was rejected or recommended against the zoning by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It does have a public hearing, and the applicant, through discussions, has requested that we indefinitely postpone the item for now and continue discussions with them about the best use for that tract. So it does have a public hearing. Mr. Coons, do I need to go ahead and conduct it because it was advertised, even though we're postponing the item? Or what do you think?
I believe yes, just don't close it, so that when we pick this up again at some point in the future, the public hearing would.
Even without a
still be
date
open.
certain, we can do that?
Mhm.
All right. Am I getting a nod from you?
It depends on how far out it is. I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer, that's how I answer things, it depends. Okay.
We can always start the process over again, though, if
Yes,
the desire is to go through this exactly the same. In the event that they wanted to bring this specific item forward to council that's already gone through P and Z, it would have to go through P and Z again if we hold the public hearing now and then postpone? Or it depends?
No, it does not have to go back through. The only reason it would need to go back through is if we go too long before we bring the item back up and it re-triggers the public notice and hearing processes, and then it would go back to P and Z again and follow our normal procedures.
All right, well, fair enough. We'll just see what happens. And so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? All right. I'm going to leave the public hearing open, and I'm going to recommend that we indefinitely postpone. Is that correct? Leave it open and definitely postpone. Okay. It's been motioned by the mayor. It's been seconded by Councilmember Tenorio. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. Next up, agenda item number 11. Is this the three? Hang on. Oh, no, I know what this one is. All right, agenda item number 11. Consider a request for a waiver from the minimum standards provided by section 41-136C, City of Kyle ordinances. Mr. Coons.
The request before you is for a waiver to the subdivision standards. There is proposed the subdivision of property along the north section of Old 81. The site is constrained by a piece of property that the applicant does not own. That's on the north side of their property, on the northeast corner of the plat that's in your packet. The other constraint is the drainage feature that runs through the center of the property and is along the southern border of the proposed new lot. The city's subdivision code reads that the lot width should be substantially the same along the street frontage as it is at the front building line. Well, the way that this lot will be drawn, it will be, on paper, it looks to be a flag, although it is conforming because they have adequate lot width, so it's not technically a flag lot, but there is the pole of the driveway and the body of the lot itself is in the back. So per the statute, it doesn't meet the letter of our code, but because they're constrained by property outside of their boundaries and the floodway that they can't do anything about, staff recommends that it should be allowed, the applicant should be allowed to draw their lot as has been presented.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Anyone have any questions, comments on this item? Councilmember Ellison, are you reaching for the mic?
I make a motion, we approve the waiver.
Okay. All right, it's been motioned by Councilmember Ellison. It's been seconded by Councilmember Villalobos, I think. Is that right? All, is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Mayor, if I might, just a point of order that was raised by the city secretary. Item number 9, which was the curfew for minors, passed 7-0. That's the first reading of an ordinance which would make it eligible for final adoption if there's the consent of the council.
Any objection to finally passing agenda item number 9? Okay, it's finally passed. Next up, agenda item number 12, First Amendment to the Development Agreement by and between the City of Kyle and Calogridis and Calogridis Development LLC and consent agreement to Lennar Homes of Texas and Construction LTD Cool Springs Subdivision. Mr. Coons.
This is a development agreement the city entered into with the Calogridis Development LLC. At the time, the portion of the DA that related to lot coverage and impervious surface was based upon the city's old standard. In the interim, the city has changed their standard for how we calculate impervious surface and the allowable impervious surfaces that are permissible per a individual single-family development lot. The applicant has come forward and is seeking to change the language of their development agreement, essentially to go from net impervious surface ratios of each lot to a gross impervious surface ratio of the entire project. It's analogous to the way that impervious surface is calculated in Plum Creek. So the entire site boundaries, including the public streets and public sidewalks, and all the development that will happen on the private property inside the boundaries of the parent property will be contained in their stormwater management ponds. But what this will allow them to do is in limited instances when they have smaller lots because of curve radius or however the design was drawn, they would be able to necessarily exceed the impervious surfaces that are currently approved in their development agreement and go to a site-wide standard instead. So they're basically able to affect the same stormwater management just in a different way that it's being calculated. So staff supports their application and we have brought it forward for them.
Right. Any questions for Mr. Coons? Councilmember Arabi. I'm sorry. Councilmember Tenorio.
So I have a question about that then.
Okay.
Since we're going to a gross basis, right? All
For
the
this
properties,
project.
Much like Plum Creek has a clomer over the whole piece of project, right?
Perhaps. I don't know that to be true, but okay.
Well, they've argued it for years.
Okay.
So we're gonna go with that at the moment.
Okay.
Purposes of this argument.
So stipulated. Got
Thank
it.
That means that an engineering study was done based on the retention of all of their property in which the flood waters can be contained.
That is correct.
Okay, has that been done to this? Because the verbiage you're stating that each property,
The short story is yes. They will be able to exceed impervious surface ratios on a limited number of individual lots. And because they have such a large amount of property that is not being developed upon at all, their gross impervious surface ratio will be able to be contained by their existing stormwater management features, irrespective of whether or not each individual lot was limited to a certain number or if the entire property is limited to a number.
Well, I understand, it sounds lovely, but is there some engineering that's based on?
Yes,
Okay, thank you very much.
I know what you're getting at, and I argued with them too, and they showed me that, yes, they can, and I said, okay.
Then I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Thoughts? Councilor Tenorio. All right, it's been motioned by Councilor Tenorio. It's been seconded by Councilor Villalobos. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 13, consent agreement for the trails at Windy Hill and resolution consenting to the annexation of land into North Hays County Municipal Utility District Number 1, and authorizing the mayor to execute a consent agreement between the City of Kyle, North Hays County MUD, Number 1, and the Trails LLC. Mr. Earp.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. For the record, James Earp, Assistant City Manager, also moonlighting as City Manager today. Items number 13, 14, and 15 are all interrelated, therefore meaning that they all need to be approved or they all need to not be approved. And I'm going to go into the background here, but most of you are familiar with the Trails development at Windy Hill.
But Mr. Earp, actually, do you want me to open all three of them up simultaneously? We can take
That's
votes
your
on it
prerogative, Mayor, if you'd like to.
simultaneously. Does anybody have an objection to considering all three items simultaneously? Okay. Do I need to read them out or? All right, so we're also going to take up agenda item number 14, the tri-party agreement for the regulation of subdivisions and approval of the trails at Windy Hill. And we're going to take up agenda item number 15, first reading an ordinance of the City of Kyle confirming the inclusion of certain land into the City of Kyle's ETJ that was released by the City of Niederwald into the City of Kyle, making findings of fact and providing for related matters. All right, continue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So you may recall that sometime back we approved a development agreement with Windy Hills, with the trails at Windy Hill. And as a part of that development agreement, they had indicated that their wastewater service would be coming from Shadow Creek Mud. And in order to receive that wastewater service, they would need to be annexed into the boundaries of the mud so that the citizens that live there that are receiving that benefit would be paying the taxes back to the mud for the issuances of the debt to pay for the infrastructure. So the first item, it requires the addition of land into the territory of a municipal utility district requires the consent of which this city, of which the ETJ that the property is located in, which is us. So that is the deal. That's the item number 13 that is consenting to the annexation. As a part of that consent agreement, there is an arrangement for $2 million to be remunerated to the city as a master development fee in consideration of this annexation for the MUD. That would be coming out of their bond proceeds paid to the city, of which we have indicated that we intend to put toward the improvement of Windy Hill. Number 14.
And it's also in the contract, I'm sorry, Mr. Earp, it's also in the contract that $2 million will come out of their phase one,
Their
first bond issuance.
That's correct. Their first bond issuance, which should be expected to occur within the next year. Number 14 is the tri-party agreement. This is the same agreement that we have recently been working with the county, which is why it's a tri-party, because it's between the city, the county, and the developer. This is not dealing with the MUD, in which the county is agreeing to maintaining the roads that will remain in our ETJ inside this subdivision at a quality of a gross rating of 70 or higher. So that way, whenever we do annex this property in the future, we have some assurances from the county that the roads and the infrastructure that we are inheriting will be in fairly good condition. I must preface that this item has not gone before the County Commissioner's Court yet, but it is the same agreement that we have negotiated on the other items. So if council approves these agreements, it should be contingent upon the ratification of the County Commissioner's Court. We will send this agreement to the county for them to consider. So just to point that out on the tri-party. And then lastly is the first reading of an ordinance, of which if it passes unanimously would probably be, no, this one can't be. It does require 2 readings no matter what. because it has to do with, yeah, I think it's already on.
We need to get a petition in from the developer, and I think he wants the contract approved before he signs the petition. So if we approve these documents, it allows our development agreement to be signed, to get a petition in, and then second reading of the ordinance to be
Okay,
done.
so that's fine in this case, but what this is there was a small portion of the trails, which was on the northeast corner, that actually was not in Kyle ETJ, it was in Niederwald ETJ. And the developer went to Niederwald and had Niederwald consent to releasing that small portion, so that way the entire development could be dealt with by the city of Kyle's development agreements and agreements that they're making with us, rather than having to split between two different jurisdictions. So we have to take action to accept that ETJ into our jurisdiction, since it doesn't automatically qualify under the current ETJ rules at the state as far as what's considered our ETJ and what the buffer zone is. But property can be voluntarily added into our ETJ under petition of the property owner, which is what Paige is alluding to. So those are the items, Mayor. I think that fully addresses all of them. It's approval of the consent of the property going into the mud, the approval of the tri-party pending the ratification at the county commissioner's court, and then approval of the acceptance of the ETJ petition, of which we will receive after this item, I assume, before the second reading.
Can we approve the lot contingent upon ratification of the tri-party agreement? All three items?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's a requirement of the DA.
Right.
Right.
Any questions for Mr. Earp? All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve agenda items number 13, 14, and 15 contingent upon ratification of the tri-party agreement from Hays County. All right, it's been motioned by the mayor. It's been seconded by Councilmember Tenorio. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. Next up, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, ordering a general election to be held jointly with Hays County on November 6, 2018, for the election of City Council Place 5 and Place 6 to serve a 3-year term, designating the main early voting place for such election, providing for an order and notice of such general election, providing for related matters, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date. This is my item. I have my thing turned off. As far as, is this the polling locations as well? Is that what this item is polling locations and calling for the election itself? Most of the, because the election is running concurrently with county, state, and federal elections, most of the polling spots were already set up by Hays County. We did add the City Hall to keep it even. There's east, there's west, and then there's central. Is there any discussion on this item?
Early voting locations are going to be the same?
Yes, and you can vote early anywhere for any, as long as it's within, I think, Hays County. Is that right? If it's within Hays County, you can vote at any early polling location in the entire county, and it'll go with your number, and it'll allow for you to vote on your specific election. The election day has significantly more polling locations, but you must go to your specific precinct. So, anyway, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Tenorio. It's been seconded by Councilmember Fogley. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item number 17, first reading, the ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, ordering a special election to be held on the question of the adoption of amendments to the charter of the City of Kyle, designating November 6, 2018 as the date of the special election, prescribing the form of the ballot, providing for election procedures, and providing an effective date. And I lost my
Can we
spot
also
here.
do a final vote on 16?
Finally passed, first reading.
Yeah, finally.
Ordering the election. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at that. Is there any objection to finally passing that item? All right. All right, agenda item number 17. If you will recall, at the last regular city council meeting, Mr. Sellers, in his summary or in city manager's report, he talked about that the opportunity for us as a council to bring forward charter amendments was going to fall on this meeting in order to be, if there were any recommended amendments that the council wanted to put forward, it would fall on this meeting in order to call for this special election. Staff had a few that they wanted to bring forward. I had a few that I wanted to bring forward, and I don't believe anyone else on the council volunteered any. So what I thought we could do is just go through them one at a time and talk about each one. Some probably will be pretty brief, some may take a little bit longer, but I just want to make sure we're thorough. So is there any, are y'all okay with that, just going one by one?
Yes.
All right. All right, so first up would be amending 1.04D. It's deleting the last line, personnel appointed by the city manager. This was requested by staff in order to be more consistent with what's in reality. And Jennifer, do you want to state the clarification on that one? So the department heads and the sworn law enforcement period, striking personnel appointed by the city manager.
Yeah, so what that is all the department heads are appointed by the city manager, so they're already included. And I think at one point, so it was sworn law enforcement personnel appointed by the city manager, but the city manager appoints the chief, and
That's
he
what it is, yeah.
appoints all other sworn members, so that's why. Just
So we just added a period
inconsistency.
to make it clear, because the city manager does not appoint law enforcement officers, just the chief of police.
Right.
Anybody have any thoughts or corrections or desires to amend? If any amendments or changes, want to be made, as we go through them would be the time to make those recommendations and vote on them. All right, I'm going to move on. Section 3.06, quorum and attendance, clarifies the canvassing of the election, because when an election is canvassed per state code, it only requires 2 members of the council in order to canvass that, which I believe was what happened last time, so we were very fortunate. But it's not clearly spelled out in our charter, so this just provides clarifying language there. Any thoughts on that one? Anything to add, Jennifer? All right. Next up is meetings. We struck out the line, if practicable, no less than 12 hours notice, a special meeting shall be given to each member of the council. The reason that line was struck is because the Open Meetings Act requires 72 hours notice. I actually did have a thought to mention on this. The way that it's worded might lead the public, because I did receive multiple questions on this one, and I'm concerned that it might lead the public to think the ballot language in particular might lead the public to think that we are decreasing or taking that provision out, when the reality is our intention is to do what we're already doing, which is follow the Open Meetings Act. So I didn't know, and I apologize for springing this on y'all. If you wanted to, if it was the will of the council to change up the wording to make it clearer that we were following state law, and 72 hours was the actual number that we're going for, or if you wanted to, if you were comfortable with it and you think people will understand as is, it's up to you.
In the very next sentence, it says, meetings shall be open to the public and public notice shall be given in accordance to state law. So I guess what you were saying is actually spelling it out as 72 hours?
It's that or in the ballot language, instead, because the ballot language says, I'm moving down to it, shall section 3.07 of the city charter be amended to delete the requirement that members of the council shall receive no less than 12 hours notice of a special meeting, and change that language to say, shall section 3.07 of the city charter be amended to delete the requirement that members of the council shall receive no less than 12 hours notice of a special meeting, and rather and follow the Open Meetings Act, which requires 72 hours, which is the intent and the actual law that we follow, so that people can understand just more clearly what the ramifications of that vote would do. We can't really take out the deleting part of the 12 hours because that is what we're doing, but would it be within our purview to add the clarifying language so that people can understand the rule that we are following?
I think that would be great.
So you want to make a motion to amend the proposal? Do you want us to wait till the end? Or
Wait till the end and I'll work
can we
on-
give you a general amendment and allow for you to fill in, understanding what we're saying? Or
I'll work on the language while you're discussing, and then
Okay.
I'll have something by the time you're ready to vote.
Okay, fair enough. All right, now I got to go back up. So that was 3.07. All right, 3.09, compensation. This is my proposal. I'm proposing that we strike the paragraph under compensation for the city council in its entirety and replace it with one that's loosely modeled on the city of San Marcos and their provision. So the history with the city council, or with the Kyle City Charter, originally established a $200 stipend for the mayor and a $100 stipend for the city council. And that was pretty much it. It was very boilerplate. In 2015, the Charter Review Commission, what I believe is a desire to allow for council to consider their compensation as the job has increased through the years, added some additional language. But that language does authorize council to adjust its own pay through the mechanism of a proxy committee. So we could all each establish somebody to the committee. That committee could then bring forward a recommendation of an increase or no increase or whatever the recommendation would be. Council could then vote to accept, reject, or do whatever council wants, because the council, per the 2015 charter amendments, is in control of whether or not we are compensated. So I didn't particularly like the way that was designed. For one, it creates a paradox within the paragraph itself, meaning that if we follow the procedures set out in this paragraph and did change our compensation per a recommendation or per our will, we would then be in conflict with the charter itself, which also calls out a specific dollar amount for the council to receive. So it lays out two paths. It says this is the amount, and it says if you want to change it, council can do so. This is how council, the process to follow. If we follow that process, we then contradict the first, which is a paradox and is just not clear, in my opinion. So when I started looking at this, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I realized that was not something that I thought was well thought out. So I wanted to change it. So knowing the fact that the mechanism for council to employ to change, to reconsider their wages is intended to be in there, but is not worded in a way that's clear, and it doesn't really consider allowing for a lot of public input, other than each person can, we can create an ad hoc committee to make a recommendation, but that's still not necessarily a public process. My thought was to establish a rule that's clear, that says we're going to do it publicly, we're going to do it transparently, we're going to require public hearings, 2 public hearings, if the council ever was to want to do that, and so we would be held accountable and be a part of the budgeting, traditional, normal budgeting process. So that's the changes that I am proposing in this. It's not a pay raise. I do believe that the work that this council puts forward should be considered. I think that we are at a point in our city's history where some of the folks that are maybe thinking about a run for council are having to weigh that against the incredible cost associated with serving. But that's really not in the purview of these changes. These changes just take a complicated, paradoxical paragraph and clarify it with a process that is very transparent, forward-facing, and part of the normal budgeting process like anyone else. This is not transferring authority from one other group to make the decision and giving it to ourselves. That is false. We currently have the ability to set our own wage. No one else sets the wage for us except for the city council in the current paragraph. I just think this allows for us to engage with the voters in a more transparent manner. So, open to comments or thoughts. I'm sure we'll have some. Councilmember Fogel.
I agree. I think, this is a fluid document. It's supposed to be revisited every 2 years by the city council, not necessarily every time a charter review committee is put together, but I think it does need to be revisited. I'm one of those people that, You know, it's not necessarily what I'm getting compensated for, but it's me taking time off from work. I take, on average, you know, 2 vacation days, 2 24-hour vacation periods every month. I'm completely out of vacation time right now. So it is, you know, a lot of us put a lot of effort into this. It's what you make of it, right? I mean, you can put a little bit of effort into it. You can put a lot of effort into it. And there is a lot of opportunity cost that's involved with serving. So I definitely think it needs to be revisited. I actually didn't realize that it contradicted itself until you brought it up, and it definitely needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And again, just like you said, this is going to our citizens to be voted on for approval. We're allowing them to vote to review these amendments and vote on them if they support them. If they don't support them, then they won't vote for them. So, I mean, and that gives our citizens the opportunity to speak on the subject. But, you know, I know this isn't a discussion about salaries and what we should be compensated, but I do challenge people who are watching to look up Hays County Commissioner salary and benefit packages, vehicle allowances, retirement expenses. Look at the city of San Marcos. Look at some of the surrounding cities. Kyle's not the city that it used to be 5-10 years ago. We've changed dramatically. Our population's gone up. Development is crazy right now. And so that definitely needs to be considered. So I appreciate you bringing this forward.
Anyone else? Councilmember Villalobos.
I agree with this is an organic document, meaning it's going to change with times, and we should be reviewing it, and we're given the opportunity to do that in a transparent way for the citizens to take a vote on. So this is going to change again, I would assume, in the future as we continue to evolve and so on and so forth. I think it's you are solving the paradox, you're making it clear, straight to the point, and you're making it more transparent. I agree.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Question.
Councilmember Irby.
So has a dollar amount already been set in this year's budget?
No.
So there's no added incurrence to this year's budget at this point?
Correct.
So this year there can be no increase?
Not without an amendment. Not without council vote. Not without a public process, one way or another. But it's not currently proposed in our budget at all. I didn't want to try to approach I do think the conversation needs to be had. It needs to be something we at least can discuss. But in reviewing section 3.09, it's so complicated and fraught with, you know, legal questions that it made sense to me to really solve it the right way and start with the paragraph itself, make the paragraph clear about outlining what that process is, and then in the future, council, you know, can have at least a transparent and clearly delineated process if they want to have that discussion. But that discussion is
Explain the process to me?
right now. It's a part of our budget. It must be allocated in the budget, and there must be 2 public hearings associated. And then we pass by resolution or ordinance.
So the only recourse a voter would have is to vote that candidate out of office?
Which is the exact recourse that they currently have, if we did the same thing.
So the council sitting could essentially give themselves a raise, 2 public hearings, that dollar amount could be set within a month, and then that sitting council will be paid whatever that amount is, correct?
That's the process that I'm proposing.
And the previous process had that no,
There were no public
official-
hearings.
that no official in that term could be, could receive that compensation during their term.
Right.
So nobody sitting on the council could benefit from that increase.
Yep.
And at this point, that's been removed.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't believe that was, I understand the heartbeat behind that desire, but I think it also comes with a lot of
you explain to me?
challenges. The heartbeat behind the desire, or why I don't like it,
No, the heartbeat behind the desire.
is to prevent council members from self-serving. It's this general feeling that people have that the council, because we're in control of the budget, would vote money into their own pockets, and that's hard for them to, it's hard for the people to stomach.
And I believe that's the overarching concept that most people have with the problem with the country today.
I don't disagree. I think that self-dealing is certainly a reality that we may face throughout the country. So I don't believe that the process that's there can easily be, the process that's in place is complicated, but can easily be manipulated as well. At the end of the day, so there's multiple problems with it. One is a council member could be on the end of his or her term, vote and allow for their term to carry right over and immediately receive a raise if that was what was put into place, while someone else who was just elected would have to wait 2 to 3 years before that would affect them going. That just doesn't really jive with me, where you have council members making different wages because of a vote that they took, which was transparent, the same way that they vote compensation for every city official in their capacity. There's opportunity for corruption everywhere, but that's what our job is to build communication with the residents and to be able to defend what we do to them in the most public way possible. This is the clearest, cleanest, most public way possible that I can see. It also does not establish a change in wages. We still would have to bring that up, have multiple public hearings, and be held account at that point in time. But I don't like the idea of having council members make different amounts based on whether or not they were the ones that voted on that raise. That's not a concept that I find in any other kind of organizations. And I feel like personally that if we didn't, that if we had that in place, that it could create just as many conflicts as not having it in place.
Well, I appreciate your comments. The simple fact is I'm not doing this for wage or compensation. I'm doing it for the better of the city. And I believe that seeking wage and compensation taints the focus for the betterment of the city. You no longer have people looking for a seat purely out of betterment of the city. It comes purely from offsetting their income at that point.
And I have thought about that what you just said. I have thought about that extensively. And what I would say is I agree with you 100%. I also think that someone shouldn't be disincentivized to run, or there shouldn't be a barrier placed in front of the average person in the city of Kyle in a similar manner, where they maybe have that heart but not that capacity. The opposite of what you said is also true. So as far as what the wage should be, which is not the conversation that this charter amendment, what's that? Yeah, I understand. But so what I'm trying to do is establish a transparent process. But if we were to be considering the wage itself, the way I would approach that is to consider a wage that's related to the work involved, that is not so much that somebody would be incentivized to run because of the wage, and not so little that somebody would be disincentivized to run for because of the wage.
How much does state legislators make?
I think it's an average of $30-something thousand a year. Again, that's not the conversation that this has.
No, but you just mentioned the level of effort should be compensated by wage.
But I don't set their wage. The legislature.
My point being is that you were mentioning that we need this clear process, what you're talking about, to set a wage that will help somebody focus on winning a seat, correct? That's what you said.
That would
not disincentivize them from running.
Right.
And I say that if it disincentivizes them, should they run? If they have hardship, should they run? Don't we do I can't remember what the sheet is that we fill out every year, the annual financial sheet, the financial disclosure form. The big part of that is making sure that we pay our bills and that we can't be financially tainted by another entity. So the argument of financially, you know, having that extra to make sure they get something on the back end, that doesn't work for me. This is about service. We're not a political entity where we're looking for professional politicians. We're looking for people who are here for the benefit of the city.
The current charter has a provision written in it to allow for the council to consider their wage. I think it is a convoluted way of going about it, and in proposing that we consider a more straightforward approach. Whether or not the council receives a dime more is not the consideration of this charter
It's
amendment.
extremely straightforward. It takes all the citizens out of it, except for them coming up to the podium. So
That's
they
one
have
more
zero
provision
say.
they have than they have currently.
Well, currently, there's a group that is put together
Yeah.
to make the decisions, just like the charter review
You
committee.
know, each of us assign one person to do it, and then we can accept or reject. I don't think that's as transparent of a process as having 2 public hearings. But
A transparent process would be setting a wage and then doing an election for it and letting the citizens vote on it for the people who are paying the wage. That's a transparent process. That's a process where we're not getting to set the wage. The people who are actually paying the wage is setting the dollar amount because that's the level of service they're getting from their city council.
I'm sorry, I disagree.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't understand the stigma of one going into public service, one having to not be compensated as much as someone in the private sector, or someone, you know, our Hayes County commissioners. You're looking at a 6-figure compensation package. What we do as public servants, we still have, I'm sure there are people up here that their positions with their job, they take up a lot of time when they serve their city, and they should be compensated for their time. If someone were to be elected and they serve 3 terms, you can serve up to 3 terms, correct?
I think so.
Three consecutive terms. You would have to go 3 terms without being able to vote on the subject that you're talking about, correct? According to the current charter, the way it's written.
No, it's within your current term.
Within your current term.
So
Okay. So you would have to potentially wait 3 years.
As much as.
I don't understand the stigma of people in the nonprofit sector and people in the public sector of having to volunteer, being uncompensated for their time. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't understand it.
I understand that's your opinion.
Because I'd be
This is
willing
my
to,
opinion, and I
I,
didn't sign on for this,
Well-
to be compensated, to make this a wage
right,
earning
and I
position.
didn't either, but at the same time, I'd be willing to bet that there are some up here that contribute more time than some of our local county elected officials do, and in neighboring cities also, who are compensated way higher. I don't think, we're not even talking about compensation right now, but we're talking about the ability to talk about it, to at least have some discussions and putting it out to vote. And I don't think that's wrong. I think that's the right way to go, especially at the level we're at right now.
Well, and
That's-
one vote of 7, so you have
Right.
all the opportunity you'd like. I'm voicing my opinion, and I think it's a dirty process.
Okay, well, I disagree.
That's great. I mean, I appreciate your comment.
Councilmember Shield.
In regards to the transparency of the current versus the proposed, because right now as it stands, we propose it, we ask 7 people within the community to make a, recommendation, and then we come to the dais. Yes, people can come up in citizens' comments and say yay or nay to it, and voice their opinion at that time. But, and then we can make that decision. What the proposed is take out that 7-person panel and have a public hearing where, 2 public hearings where people can come up and voice their opinions. So really all we're taking out is that 7-person panel that we've appointed and adding at least another area of our time for the public to come up and voice their opinion. So I think it is more transparent. in regards to the idea that we approve this 1 year, and then the following year, or that following November, somebody is elected and they get to benefit from that compensation if it's passed. And for the next, 3 years, they get that compensation, but somebody who was voted in that previous November has to wait 2 years to, get that compensation. And I am a major proponent of equal pay for equal time, no matter what, if you get voted this, if you're, gender, race, whatever, but equal pay for equal time. And I will state that over and over again.
I'd like to mark that the only one that really can't accept any of the changes at this point are state workers, and I wouldn't be able to accept any change as far as wage concerns are concerned. I think in reviewing this and looking at it from a very outside the box kind of position, again, it's an organic document. There will be changes as we continue to evolve as a city. I can understand the points of more revision and more assessment by other groups of people. And I think that's warranted. I think we could probably change what we have right now and just adding that piece to it if we're going to put together a commission to review and do research and bring it forward. Maybe that's a possibility.
Which, by the way, we still could.
Yeah.
By changing this does not prevent the council from establishing a process outside of the charter whereby we could create incentive-based pay or no changes whatsoever. Sure. We could tie it to, the meetings that we attend or relative to the entire body of work that's involved. We could tie the wage to citizen comment approval in their annual survey. Those kind of things. Like, it's all possible, but just not in the way it's currently done. Councilor Tenorio.
So I'm going to tell you why I'm going to vote against this whole thing. And the reason that I'm doing that is because there was no public sentiments and input. There were no public hearings. I understand the need for increases of, salaries or compensations, if that's what you feel. That's not how I feel about it. I actually believe this was a calling to serve. And I don't do it for the $100. And I know it actually costs me way more than $100 a month to serve. But I don't like the idea of putting forth charter amendments without having had an opportunity for citizens to speak to it, for it or against it, either way. And so that's the reason I'm going to be voting no to all of the changes, just because we didn't do it in a fashion in which people had an opportunity to speak to them.
Even though, and I don't begrudge you that opinion, but even though the charter compels the city council to consider amendments and put them forward?
Absolutely not. I think the charters are something, this is our working document for our whole city. And our city is made up of more than just us 7. It's made up of all of our citizens. And giving everybody an opportunity to speak to it is important.
But isn't that when we change it, isn't that what they do? They are going to all be able to vote on
like
it?
when we did the last charter amendments,
Yeah.
we actually had a charter amendment committee. We had public hearings, and we gave everybody an opportunity to come to them. And I'd like to be able to give the citizens an opportunity to do that as well. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to vote no against this just because of that, but if you were to add public hearings to this later on, I would be willing to discuss it after citizens had had an opportunity to discuss these items themselves as well.
Anyone else? Councilor Ellison?
My turn. I wanted to kind of hear you all out in case there was something I hadn't considered or thought of. But I think everyone has made some very valid points. I'm not going to go into why I ran and the calling to serve. I legitimately think that everyone sitting up here is doing this not for themselves. I think that they saw something, whatever that may be. So I'm not going to belabor the point about compensation and whatnot. I weighed this quite heavily on what I thought about not only this particular proposed amendment, but all of them. I think that there were some limitations that were placed in the original charter language that I think are important and should be kept in there. For example, the part where missing council meetings and not being paid for that, I think that's a very legitimate limitation. I also don't like with the proposal that there could be every year, essentially, theoretically, a proposed for increase to compensation, right? Through the proposed amendment you're making.
There would be additional public requirements for the way council does their own compensation, but in terms of the mechanism, it's through the budgeting process, the same way all funds and all employees are considered. So
So
theoretically, if council
every year.
so desired, they could have cost of living increases and whatnot, theoretically, yep. Just like San Marcos and just like the current charter would allow for, I guess theoretically, except for the
Well,
provision
it
of
says that
you would be able to
increases
take
can be
it.
made only every 3 years with the current charter, correct?
Yes, you are correct. Every
So
3 years.
we'd be taking it down from 3-year review of compensation to every year potentially. That
We're
could be
just
reviewed.
taking that out and making it more straightforward, yes.
It's not even every year, it's essentially at any point in time, because you're not tied to the budget cycle. You can make a budget amendment. So you're not technically tied to once a year.
Further to my point of why I don't like that. I think the next point I was going to make, there was a point as well about receiving the increase within the limit. I also weighed that out. I see your point, Mayor, about having, if that were to go through, having some council members earning a higher wage and different things like that. I don't know if that's the way we want to go about it, but at the same time, I would personally, I think what I'm struggling with, and I think Councilmember Tenario and Councilmember Araby made points about this, is citizen input. And you made a comment earlier that the Charter Review Committee would not allow for more input. It would, because that commission would be created, they would have public hearings, there would be opportunities for people to come and voice their opinion, and what say you. Now, I do agree the point you're making, though, that the way it is set up right now, we could still do that, because we could all, I went to the Charter Review Committee, no one pretty much showed up to that. And so in many ways, it's like, are we actually even getting more input? So I do understand that. But I guess between how it is currently written and then your proposed language, I guess I personally would like for more input and more than just 2 public hearings for citizens to make their case about what we should be fairly compensated for. I feel like I had another point to make on that, but I don't know. I would really like, I don't feel with the proposed language you gave with the 2 public hearings. I do agree putting it to a vote, though, is the ultimate ask of the citizens to give their opinion, which I'm a fan of that. I'm just not so sure about the process that you've laid out is one that I'm comfortable with, that would have had the full input of what the citizenry of Cobb would want.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the charter amendment process or the proposed language within the charter?
The proposed
Because you were
language.
talking about the Charter Review Committee.
Right, that
You're
was
talking
my
about them
first.
or the citizen compensation committee that's the proxy people that we would have to look at our wage currently proposed. Which one of those?
So the proposed language that you've made for the amendment.
Okay.
That's the part that I feel like there could be more public input on, and I don't think that how it's written right now, we would get the most out of that.
Easiest way to do it is get an outside entity to do a study on us, our city, on other cities similar in size, just like we do for when we compensate the rest of the staff. My biggest rub with this is, unlike the rest of the staff, they do not get to make their own wage. We set their wages.
Right.
And we'll also be the ones setting our own wage, with no citizen getting to vote on that, except for every 3 years when they get to get us out of our seat. That's not a good democratic process. If you want to do a true democratic process, unbiased, you annually, like most companies do cost of living projections, and at that time you can see and do a review over all the cities that are like ours, just like we do for every other department, and put that out, find out what they say. That's an independent review, send it out to vote for the citizens, and that's done. That takes us out of the equation.
Well,
But it's no longer sitting there. We have plenty of input from other citizens. You get plenty of review from outside entities that are unbiased, and it's not us giving ourselves money. That's easy fix. I believe the person in charge of the budget should not be the person writing their own check. That's the rub with this.
Anyone else?
So Mayor, are we voting on each charter amendment, or are we waiting till the end?
Do at this point.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, to amend each one, so that if it's kept in or if it's taken out, if there's a motion to strike this one from the proposal, we can consider that motion. I don't disagree with everything you're saying. I'm not as concerned about the most democratic process. I'm more concerned about a transparent process that actually accomplishes the stated mission to allow for qualified candidates to be conservatively compensated for their time and energy in such a way that neither incentivizes nor disincentivizes them to serve based on wage, especially considering the composition of the city of Kyle demographically. It is very, very difficult to find folks that have the time and the ability to serve in their current capacity. And so many of the important meetings involved in with the city are between the 8 and 5 hours. And so
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I was going to say, I don't disagree with any of those points you're making, and I do think the language needs to be addressed, because all the points you made earlier.
But do you realize the language that's paradoxical, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
The
no.
language that's paradoxical in here, that's convoluted, that part of it was created through a charter review commission where a bunch of the folks with good intentions sat around and hemmed and hawed and added one language piece and didn't take one piece out. And we got something that I can't very easily even work with from the process that is laid out. So I'm just trying to establish a clear, transparent way of going about business. And then if the voters approve, then it'll be up to the council to justify the decisions that they make at any given point in time, the way that it is in Hays County and the way that it is in virtually every other jurisdiction.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Story.
Okay, so at this point, I think that we have already should we just go ahead and bring this back under the second reading? I mean, there has to be rewarded. Obviously, we're not going to get consensus on everybody agreeing to this. So should we move forward and rethink the verbiage during the time that we're talking about the other items that are on this? I'm just wondering if we're beating a dead horse.
I think, again, it's an organic document that we need to consider, and we need to consider all points. I think we can make some changes to this just to ensure that we are engaging and being transparent, and we're allowing the citizens to help us make this decision. I understand the non-biased approach that Councilmember Araby brings forward, and it's a great consideration for myself. So restructuring it, making sure that we have all the points that we need to consider, I think is a good thing.
For this particular amendment, it would be helpful to have direction, if it's going to proceed, to have direction on what language the council wants to consider in this amendment. And so a vote on this particular item would be helpful. And if you decide that you should vote on each proposed charter amendment that's in front of you, we could do that as well.
But it's a first reading. I think what Councilmember Tenorio is saying is, can we continue to move it along without losing out on the special election window, and give us time to, reconsider it, see public input and various things on it?
Let me look at the deadline for calling the election. Do you know that?
The deadline for calling the election is August 20th, so.
We have the 14th meeting.
Yeah, so we would have the 14th special meeting would be second reading for any election.
The 14th meeting is when we could theoretically change it.
And I'm going to be out of town next week, but I can get this done before I leave, and if another attorney needs to attend to address this, they can do so. So we can accommodate you getting it done on that day.
So my question is are we wanting to take this out completely, leave it the way that it currently is, and establish some other process? Is that what y'all are saying? Or are you open to continuing to move forward if you can have some concessions on the way that the language is proposed?
You proposed three different things there, right?
Right.
So say them again.
So in other words, are you saying you're against this as it's proposed flat out, or are you open to negotiating some points, some deal points in the language to allow for it to be whatever you think is more appropriate, moving it along and amending it in that way?
I definitely want to address the language, yes, for it to be more appropriate for, I guess, what my vision of what it is, and I can
Do
definitely
you already
make
have the
some.
language that you're wanting to change, the things? that
Not
you're
right
wanting to
now,
add?
but I could.
We could
come
have some
up with that.
discussions on that.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, we can also add a special meeting if we need to, prior to the 20th.
Yeah, we got that 12-hour notice, right? Sorry. All right. So what do we want to do? Does anybody want to try to motion to amend or strike or take it out right now? Or are we going to keep moving forward knowing that there's some work we need to do to get more consensus for second reading?
I think move it forward, but I would like to offer maybe something to kind of help.
Okay.
As it stands right now, the proposal is us propose it to public hearings, and then we pass it. But what if we add that it then needs to go to, since we're gonna have an election every November, somebody on this dais is going to be, in re-election for every November. So what if we add with final approval from voters?
So having a special election every time we propose to change the wage for whatever it is, allocate for it in the budget is what you're saying, because we vote on the budget in September.
She's saying actually put it as part of the election modes.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying a special election, just put it as part of the regular election.
Part of the regular
functions.
election.
Well, you have to call, I'm sorry,
Call
I'm
a
using
spe-
language.
yes,
You
you
have to
would have to
call a
call it
special election.
election.
It's a part of the November 6th. It would just be a proposition.
Just
It's-
like
Just
this
like we have
would
two
be-
things we have to
just
vote on
like
this
this
time.
would be, yes.
So
Yes,
essentially, the
that's-
voters have to, the voters of the city of Kyle have to ratify
Still have to
anything we do.
ratify
We
it,
still do
yes.
it transparently.
Mhm.
What's your thoughts on that, Councilmember Ellison?
So exactly the proposed compensation would be a part of the special election?
Councilmember Shields saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I hear you saying is leave everything as it's currently written, but then add language in the compensation that says, after our 2 public hearings, after we allow for that amount that we decide in the budget as we pass the budget, then it must be ratified by the voters in November election, any proposed changes to council compensation.
So we could do that, just that particular part gets voted on of the budget?
If there's an increase proposed to council pay, the voters ratify, in which case you could theoretically say it would be a January 1 moving forward kind of adjustment, any compensation.
I mean, that's
I don't know how it gets more
As I'm
transparent.
thinking about it right
And
now,
the
I don't-
proposition would actually be the actual dollar amounts that are being proposed to be changed, that would be voted
I mean,
on.
that's as open
and
as
the
you can
people
be.
we work for or have a say in what that is, so.
Theoretically, we could be changing the charter every year.
No, it would not be in the charter. The charter, and that's where I think some of the challenges with our city charter, the charter would spell out the process, not the dollar amount.
Okay.
So the process would be any changes to compensation must be ratified by the voters as an extra sentence in there. Then we make the change and it goes to the voters, which is to Councilmember Araby's point.
And Mayor, the one thing I would need to check on is whether you can hold an election for that purpose, because most elections have to be authorized by state law. And so there's a legal question about whether your charter can create a requirement for an election.
Well, it wouldn't be a requirement. It would be a requirement if we adjusted it, right?
Correct.
And then we would have to put it before the voters. You're saying even in that case, that may be
What you're
against
doing.
the law?
Right, what you're doing is you're creating a reason why an election would be held, and I would just want to check that state law allows you to do that.
Okay. I believe Georgetown does something similar. I've been looking at a lot of charters lately, so, but it's actually, they change their charter each time, which maybe is why they adjust it each time. So, but whatever, if you want to check into that.
Yes,
that
I
would
will
be
do
good.
that.
So,
Well, I think, Councilmember Irby brings up a good point. Now, what he talked about can't that be addressed in the last two sentences of what you're providing here? So, similar to how we determine the city manager's salary and wage when we go through negotiations to do that. Doing some type of regional analysis. The last two sentences you have there are pretty broad, and I think it would be we could fit the language in there to address his concerns.
the last two sentences in the charter language or
Right.
in the?
No, in the chart, in your proposed.
Those are
amendment.
both, the last two sentences
'Cause I-
are related to reimbursement.
So just reimbursement, not, because I kind of saw that as expenses.
Well, it
So-
says that you have to put it in the budget. The mayor and council have their own expense account within the budget.
Because I thought
And
we
it
already have
says-
that, because
We
we
do.
already
Yeah.
get expenses
This brought, it
reimbursed.
just brought the exact same process down from the previous. I just.
Okay, so why don't we just add
It
the
could be-
process in there?
It could be added after each member of the council shall receive his compensation for their services, a salary established by ordinance adopted after review of regional salaries or whatever.
Regional study.
Yeah, the regional study after 2 public hearings.
Well, if we, requiring a regional study in the charter is fine. It's also something that we could all agree to do at any point in time. It would not change the authority of the council or the ability of the council to set its own wage or to ignore the study.
Well, I think
Which is
that
why I
it's-
think the
I
charter
think
should.
Mr. Mayor wants to be able to set his own wage.
Well, I think that we need to, if we're gonna do it, let's do it in this language to where it is perfectly changed, because at any time, these members are gonna change, but the charter remains steady. And so adding that into this could help.
You're talking about the regional
Correct.
study or as opposed to the ratification by the voters?
Correct. Well, no, I'm just
To
saying.
me, the ratification by the voters
It's just
proposal really
saying, basically, it's saying, we're gonna give you the salary, we're gonna make this recommendation after we've gotten a study, and the study will be included as part of supplemental. That's all it's saying.
Yeah. Okay.
And can we move forward?
Yeah, I'm trying. It's just, is there anyone else that wants to bring anything forward, or do you want to make a motion on this? currently. We'll come back for a second reading to change it now, or we can work offline. Councilman Ellison. All right, the next one is Section 5.01, Notice and Order of Elections. Jennifer, do you want to, I don't remember what this one was. Do you want to explain it?
Okay. Currently, this, the publication of not more than 30 days and not less than 20 days, there's a standard notice provision in the election code that is slightly different from this. And so previous city secretary would publish notice in accordance with the charter and a separate one in accordance with the election code. And so I'm just proposing that we just go by the election code.
Okay. Anybody want to change any part of that? Are we all good with that? All right, next one is 5.07A, official ballots. Jennifer, do you want to say what that one is?
Okay, so see the 2 business days or more prior to the start of early voting are, since we use machines through Hayes County, they have to have a public testing of the machine far before any voting. And so this 2 business days or more prior is just not even, it's kind of antiquated, I guess.
Okay. Anyone have any thoughts or comments or questions on that one? All right, next up is 701, striking the requirement the city manager shall reside within a reasonable period of time by council within the city. This one I thought we could briefly discuss. I will say I do believe the city manager on under most consideration or most of the time should be required to live in the city as per the contract they sign with the city council when that contract is negotiated. The way that it's currently written into the charter strips that right from the council to make the consideration when negotiating with the city manager. And I believe that the council should have the as wide of a net as possible to cast when they consider where they're trying to recruit from, and should have the ability to negotiate with a city manager on all fronts. So that's my opinion. I don't expect it to be universally accepted from this dais, but if anybody has thoughts or comments. It's not an opinion about our current city manager or a statement about our current city manager, and it's not a statement about whether or not I believe the city manager should be allowed to live outside the city. But I just think, for example, like, I'm sorry, if we were conducting interviews for a city manager and someone lived on Austin or San Antonio or somewhere and had a senior in high school that was going to graduate or something along those lines, maybe we could provide in the contract they could live. After 18 months, they would be compared to move. All other factors even, we felt like that city manager was the appropriate one for the city. We wouldn't want to lose the bid because it's in our charter and we don't even have the power to negotiate it. That's my only point on
The charter just basically says within a reasonable amount of time, and basically you're saying is if you have a senior in college, you can consider that a reasonable period of time. I don't see the need to take it out of the charter. I think that it's, like I said before, these 7 places are going to continuously change. And the city manager is the cheerleader for the city. And so I think that it's important that the city manager know that they have to live in the city of Kyle. I mean, can you imagine, I want to bring business to the city, I want houses in the city, oh yeah, but I don't live here? Doesn't look right. And I understand what you're saying, you want it as a negotiating point. That really isn't something that should be up to negotiation. You should be living in the city, and I wouldn't change that.
Okay. I think the voters should be able to decide whether or not, I wouldn't want to lose the city manager. So I do, as much as anything, I think this one should be, the voters should at least be able to make the decision whether or not that it is an absolute requirement or not. But it's up to it'll be up to the voters, and it's up to this dais whether, if y'all want to prevent the voters from even having the ability to consider that, that's fine. I'm proposing it here, and we can make a decision on it, so.
I agree. I think it opens up your applicant pool, especially when it comes time to hiring, if you don't have the requirement of living within the city. I know that one of our Economic Development Commission, it's not a requirement that you live within the city, and we have some truly good leaders doing some great work on that committee that otherwise we may not have if that requirement was in there, that they live within the city. I know that there are a lot of public safety agencies, police department, fire departments that require that they live within the city, and that's been very problematic as far as cost of living goes. That's not as much of an issue here, but I'm kind of on the fence about this one, but I'm more open to allowing them to live within a certain radius rather than within the city limits. I wouldn't want our city manager living an hour away in San Antonio, but something reasonable in between, I don't think would hurt. But just like you said, it would be going out to the voters.
Yeah, I too have my opinions on whether the city manager should be in the city or not. Regardless of that opinion, though, I think this would be going to the voters, and the citizenry would decide that. So, as much as I feel strongly of one particular way, it's going to the voters, so they would decide. That's what I'm saying. I have no problem with this being on there.
You look at this, I look at it from maybe a different perspective, and I know that we have, and maybe some of the same perspective as some people on the dais as well, is that the access, they're supposed to be marketing our town. They're supposed to be available for, here as of recent, within the last 4 to 5 years, emergencies. And being there to help make those decisions, although we hire good staff to make those decisions on their own. It's something that our community has become very familiar with, is having the city manager there as they're making those decisions. They want to see that face, and they want to see them there in an expedient manner. But I also see the bigger picture here, in that when you want to open up that candidate pool and you're looking for highly qualified individuals, it doesn't prevent us across the board to negotiate that reasonable amount of time, even without the language in there, which is something important for us. Again, organic document, it's going to change. It's probably going to change in a few years again. I mean, people are going to be looking at this as we continue to evolve as a city. So I like the candidate pool point, but I would like to ensure that, in a reasonable amount of time, and having that person within our locale in a reasonable amount of time is important to me. So.
I think we all share a very similar perspective on this. I don't think anybody's trying to say the city manager should live far away. I think most people on this dais believe that the city manager should live in the city, if at all reasonable. I just can conceive of, what if they're a rancher? What if they've got, acreage and would like to build, a house right in our ETJ with cattle, undertaking city services? We'd have to say, we can't even consider that, unfortunately. Just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to tie the council's hands in that way. Just my opinion on it, but I think the voters can decide one way or another on it. It's my opinion.
So I got a question then. So how does that better our city, with the city manager living outside of it?
It allows for the council to.
No. How does it better our city? I know what it allows for council to do. How does it better our city?
I'm trying to answer that. It allows for the council to cast the widest net possible as we're considering a city manager, so that we can get the city manager that can, whether they are a cheerleader or not, what they certainly are is the chief administrative officer of our city, to manage and effectively run our city. I believe it's more important to have the best city manager than it is to have a city manager that lives in our city.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think that's a great thing. So our city manager can live in Hawaii. There's lots of CEOs that live in different countries, right? I mean, I am correct on that, I know it.
Okay.
Okay? But it's not the fact that they can't run a business from another location. We're not defending that point. We want them to be in the same place that they're providing services for those people that are paying his position.
I agree.
And if
Most
he
of the
doesn't
time.
feel the hardships that the citizenry feel, how is he to know how to make effective changes?
I'm saying that there might be circumstances that where the manager, that we believe that the city manager would make, that the city manager we want to hire that would do the best job for the people has a reason that makes sense to the council for a time or for whatever reason where they would not necessarily reside in the city limits, that circumstance I can conceive of coming up. And the council, by this provision, the council may unanimously agree that it's the right thing to do, but not be able to do it, and have to pass on that city manager and go with one that is of less caliber, because that one can reside in the city limits. And as a result, I think this does a disservice. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. We want city managers to live in the city and experience the pains that we all live. But that's not the fundamental requirement of
Can
a
you
city manager.
imagine, okay, so I agree, let's say he's living in Hawaii. We have a flood down the street, can't be here. You're allowing that, basically you're giving the door open to be, you're giving the door open to have somebody just cybering in. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who's actually on the floor, on the ground, able to get to our citizens and our buildings immediately. And they should have to experience the high tax rates that they're proposing. They should have to live within this area and know what the streets, how bad the streets are because they're driving the streets. So I completely and totally agree that this really, it's a matter of the
They should drink the
city.
same water. They should have the same sewer problems that we have.
They should pay the same water rates we're paying. I mean, it's all a matter of being an active member of your city.
I don't disagree with anything.
I think for me, the way I'm kind of seeing it, I think, and what the mayor is saying, we all agree, I don't disagree with that. But the 7 of us might feel that way. If we put this out to a vote and the citizenry has an opportunity to say what they feel about this, then that to me is really hammering the point home. And what if it's a 70% vote that they want to not take that language out of there, then
And see, a lot of this could have already been solved had we had public hearings, had we had citizen comments, had we had an opportunity to
maybe. No one shows up to those things, though. Maybe. But a vote, that would happen and people would be able to express how they
Exactly, if they'd had an
feel.
opportunity to come and be a part of the whole thing. I mean, that's why we had a charter review committee. That's why we do things like this. Sitting at forth in just an ordinance saying, this is what we're gonna do, doesn't involve any outside comments. It's just like, oh, this is what we're gonna do, okay. So
Not
why don't
really.
we
There-
just write that into the charter? We no longer have to have a charter review committee.
I don't think we need to exaggerate that much.
Well, I'm not exaggerating, I mean, that's what we're getting at. We're saying, okay, we are gonna, let's just put that in there too. I mean, we can add that. Let's vote on that too. It's up to the citizens. Do they want a charter review committee? I mean, we're getting to the point now where we're getting, okay, well, we don't like this word, but we like this word. We want this person here, but we don't want this. You know, a lot of this, like I said, could have been solved, and this is exactly why I'm gonna vote no on all of it, is because we did not involve our citizens.
Could we not do that, though, if we did have a charter review commission, they send to us their suggestions, then we would debate the words that they did?
And then make the decision.
But there would have been an opportunity for additional people to speak.
Well,
Yeah, but my point is, I guess, to back that up is that, when did you get to see them?
These proposed amendments? Thursday, I guess, when.
So what level of, and what are we going against with the special election? How much time do we actually have to debate this? I feel like I'm being forced into decisions when it affects our charter, our governing document. Especially with the budget amendments that are gonna have to be made with this. With the other things that feel like they're starting to pop up with nobody talking. It's starting to make me just disheartened with this whole process here. I gotta tell you one thing, you know, changing a lot of these fundamental pieces to this, which has been in the government document, you know, since early 2000s, since the group that put us together as a home rule city, put these in to protect themselves against the decisions of this governing body. And you take it lightly is my problem. There is no discussion on it, because Thursday, you're absolutely right. I got to see these for the first time. Well, along with a lot of other things at the last budget meeting we had. It seems like our, you know, what you're talking about, an open process is no longer an open process. And I'm starting to have my fill of it. You're finding your voting blocks very, very effectively at this point.
Do y'all want to make a motion to remove this, or do you want to make a motion to leave it, or do we want to move on?
I'll make a motion to remove that item.
701 or?
701.
I second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we remove section 701 from the proposed charter election, charter review election ordinance, whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. So the line that's stricken?
Correct, so the section 701 will be completely removed.
Completely removed.
Yes.
You know, what's the word, the verbiage in regards to rescinding that? Because we can change the language on this again. I understand what, I guess my take in just coming back on what you just explained, Councilmember Aramie, is that the timeframe and not giving the proper due diligence for each different charter is basically what you're getting at, correct?
It's a small portion of it, but yes.
And I understand the undertones of the other items as well. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand where you're coming from. That's all.
Roll call vote. So let's, before you call, the motion is to, the motion is to strike the section out. So a yay vote strikes, a no vote is a vote to keep it as is. It's an amendment.
Arabi,
Aye.
Shield,
I'm gonna let the voters have it, so I'm gonna say nay.
Ellison,
Nay.
Fogley,
Nay.
Villalobos,
Nay.
Tenorio,
Nay.
Mitchell.
Nay. All right. Motion fails 6-1. All right, next up is item section 903. We're striking the entire section for tax assessor collector because the section is no longer needed because it reports to Hays County. Is that correct? Jennifer, I'm sorry, I didn't spend much time on these last ones because they don't change anything in terms of the way we operate.
I had spoken with Pervez Mohit, and he stated that it is his responsibility from the city side. So it would be my recommendation to remove this amendment from the ordinance.
So I'm sorry, say that again. You want to take this out? You don't want to put,
Mr. Mohit had said that it is his responsibility from the city side. Even though we contract with the county,
oh, I see.
that it is his responsibility.
Okay. All right, well then I make a motion that we remove section 9, the
Second.
proposal in 9.03. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 6-1. All right, last up is transportation services. This is a proposal to eliminate the requirement that transportation services receive a franchise license with the city of Kyle. The proposal essentially says we have ride-sharing services that perform the same function that do not require city services, do not require a franchise license, and as a result, it seems to me appropriate that the voters can decide whether we want to treat ride-sharing companies and taxi cabs on the same playing field, or whether or not we want to continue to hold taxi services to a franchise license without Uber, the likes of Uber and Lyft. It makes sense to me. I'm fine removing it, but if folks want to keep having a franchise license required of taxi companies, I can understand that. Mr. Hendricks, you had a couple things you wanted to add to this one with regards to permits?
Yes, sir. We've struggled for years to figure out how to fairly apply the franchise rule to all taxi cabs. Just because you see a taxi going through Kyle doesn't mean he's providing service to the city. We have Yellow Cab, all the other cab companies that typically operate in San Antonio, San Marcos, and Austin that are already regulated by those cities may just be driving through. They may have a destination here. Rarely do they ever have a destination and delivery within the city limits. So it's hard for us to be able to enforce the franchise requirement. Well, we do have a taxi cab ordinance, and we could, we've had discussions about ways we could still regulate and permit taxi cabs through an administrative permitting process, as opposed to going through a legislative process of passing a separate franchise ordinance for each company providing service here. But we know that they're permitted and regulated and monitored and inspected through the cities of Austin, San Marcos, and San Antonio. So that part of our duty to make sure that those services are safe for our citizens is already being taken care of.
Anybody have thoughts on it?
What other transportation services could end up falling under this? Like, so I know we've talked about taxis and ride shares.
It could potentially be some kind of private, or even if we were to have an agreement with Capital Metro, or that they would, under this clause in the charter, they would have to work out a franchise agreement.
Is that what they have in Austin? Do we know? That's how that's typically
I
done?
believe in Austin, it's a permit process, and the permit regulations in the major cities are pretty stringent. They have whole departments that administer those.
How much more stringent is a franchise agreement versus what we can do in the permitting process legally?
The franchise, the franchise agreement typically gives them the right to operate here, and a lot of times establishes a franchise fee. And then there would be a permit fee potentially on top of that. The franchise fee is typically designed to reimburse the city by the operator for use of public right-of-way. What we would propose and bring forward is a permit fee that would basically apply to all yellow cabs, for example. So if we saw a yellow cab operate in Kyle, we would know right away that that company has a permit to operate their cabs in Kyle. Theoretically, we could probably do that the same with the franchise agreement, but that creates a separate legislative process for each company.
Okay, so to make sure our citizens are safe, make sure the company is bonded and everything like that can all fall under the permit process.
Correct. Now, if there's an outlier, like a company that's providing services only to Kyle and does not have a permit with one of those other companies, then we do have a process already in the taxi ordinance to do inspections and to permit each of those cabs.
And make sure that they're up to date on their insurance and everything.
Currently, because of the uneven playing field that the franchise agreement presents and the lack of the major taxi cab companies wanting to apply for a franchise agreement. We don't currently have any franchise agreements or active permits for cabs operating in Kyle.
All right, thanks.
So do y'all want to allow this one to go forward, or do you want to leave it in there? It's completely up to you. I don't really have a strong opinion either way.
Can we have an opportunity here from, there's a representative that owns a taxi company here. Can we afford him some time to talk if he chooses to?
Sure.
Can you state your name?
You got to come up for it.
Because I know there's a franchise fee associated with that, so I don't know what your.
Hello, my name's Ivan Castellon, owner of San Marcos and Beauty Taxi. I see where you all coming from. It's kind of difficult when you all want to put a franchise on a taxi company, but you guys are allowing Uber and Lyft to do whatever they want around here. You know, I love Uber and Lyft. We use them, but sometimes we use them ourselves. What we do with Kyle, with San Marcos, what they do is that we pay a yearly fee. Now, for doing the franchise agreement and doing a percentage of whatever, you know, it's kind of, it's difficult. Tenorio, Councilwoman Tenorio, whenever we were brought up here for the Beauty Taxi, she did all the work to find out the ordinance and stuff like that, which it's very extensive work. But the way San Marcos has it too is they allow Uber and Lyft to work there, but they also have an agreement with them. You know, the same thing that we have to go through, they have to go through. You know, it's not fair for us to pay y'all the money, but allow these other people to do the same thing. You know, we have to get commercial, we have to do a commercial insurance, you know, they verify it every month. You know, the one thing I noticed here, they didn't verify it. So it's, you know, a lot of people think taxi companies are going away. We're not going away. We're actually trying to help you guys out, you know, even with the city. But if you guys would do a fee and then a permitted fee, like each car pays $20 a year, plus the yearly fee that we pay $1,000 a yearly fee to operate in San Marcos, which to me is more reasonable than trying to calculate every single, how many drivers made this, how many drivers made that, and you know, I think that would be more beneficial for y'all and for the city to get money back. Right now, nobody, there's another cab company that does business here. There's Yellow Cab, there's Austin Cab, there's 1010 Taxi that picks up here too. They're using your guys' roads without paying y'all. The reason I didn't even come up for it again, because I don't think it's fair that you allow these other companies to operate and not collect anything from them. You know, I would be willing to pay a yearly fee and a per car fee. It's $25 per car in San Marcos. And it's a lot easier for us to do that than try to do it as we originally had it. And, you know, I will bring it back up over here because, I mean, I will give you guys money, but at the same time, you guys got to help us with the other companies. It's not, to me, it's not fair. It's my insight on that.
Question. What did you pay the city of Kyle when you did have your franchise fee?
It was not, I mean, it wouldn't even accumulate $1,000 a year.
I believe it was 5%.
Yeah, it was 5%, but I think you guys will get more money if you guys say, hey, if you guys pay me this yearly fee every year, and like I'm coming up for renewal in San Marcos, a month before they have to have all the paperwork. They have to have the insurance, they have to have all the drivers, the backgrounds, everything that is required, you know, that the city needs. We have to have it a month prior. And then we give them the $1,000 check. Then we give them, for every car, it's $20 per car that they inspect, that they give you a paper and they give you a permit for you to put on your vehicle. To me, that's more reasonable than trying to do all the other stuff. I mean, I would come back up here and say, hey, let's put San Marcos Taxi here too. You know, because I'll give you my $1,000 and I'll give you 6 cars we have over there, that's $25 per car. So, I mean.
Yearly fee, $1,000 plus $25 a car per year.
The fee to operate, there's $1,000 per year, plus the 25.
There's no franchise requirement in San Marcos or Austin.
We have to get approved by the city, of course. You know what I mean? But there's Hays County Taxi and there's us.
Correct.
But Yellow Cab is not authorized to pick up there. You know, they have to pay their own thing too. So I'm okay with giving you guys the money, but you guys, what are we gonna do with Uber and Lyft? You know, we use them, and that's not a problem. I even use them sometimes when my drivers are too busy. So I think we gotta be fair all around. Or I could change my name to a ride-sharing company, and then I'll be just like them.
So, like with San Marcos, when Uber and Lyft, they have Uber and Lyft in San Marcos, how does that all work, do you know?
From my understanding, they pay the same fee also. So it's all one fee. So it's not because you have 1,000 cars, you know, you're gonna pay more. It's one fee, one shot, you know, per vehicle. And, you know, I guess the way they do it with their fees per vehicle is the amount of, they cap how many vehicles they have in San Marcos. So, I mean, that could be beneficial for y'all. Because you guys, I mean, I'm starting to see, I have the Uber app myself. I'm an Uber. I signed up to be an Uber driver myself just to see what's going on in Kyle and Sam and Buda. And I'm telling you, you guys, there's more drivers coming in. And there's more drivers. I mean, I'm okay, we got regulars. I mean, that doesn't affect us at all. But that's more drivers coming in means more money for you guys. So.
I think the critical issue is just enforcement. I mean, the hardest thing is to enforce.
That's the hardest thing, because
Right.
every time
Because there really is no way to really truly enforce the permitting,
Mhm.
right? Unless there's a complaint. And the only time you have a complaint is when you have competition.
Trust me,
complaining-
I'll chase
complaining
them.
against each other.
I'll chase them.
Mayor, it's my understanding that Uber and Lyft are regulated by the state, and municipalities don't really have any role or authority in that. I might ask the city attorney to verify that, but I don't know that we could compel them to pay a permit fee.
No, that's correct. The legislature passed in the last legislative session rules that preempted the city's franchise authority over those ride-sharing type companies. And taxi cabs were excluded. Another example of transportation would be like a limousine or other type of car service that's arranged other than through a digital network. So that appears to be the distinction if you're using a digital network like those apps on your iPhone. So you're not regulating them in that manner through your franchise authority because you're preempted now.
But Uber has an app where it says Uber Taxi on it too. So they're actually operating like a taxi service too. Because if you go on their app, they have Uber regular and then they have Uber Taxi. So that's kind of.
For the purposes of the charter amendment, reducing, how about we just continue to look into it, and at the second reading, we can make a more determinate, we can actually take a vote if we need to on whether or not to strike it. We'll consider it more thoroughly at that
I
time.
just have a quick question. So are you for or against the franchise agreement?
I'm for it.
I'm still, sorry, just.
You got to protect your people, so I'm for it.
You're for the franchise agreement as well as.
Because right now, I'm gonna be honest with you,
permitting.
we operate here and
All
I'm
right.
just like, you know,
Okay.
I know I don't have a permit.
Ivan,
Okay.
you would rather have a franchise agreement than a permit process?
Or both?
Both.
Because you currently don't have a franchise
No, I don't have a
in
permit.
San
So
Marcos.
it'd be a permit. So
Right.
it'd be a permit and a franchise. I mean, you have to have your agreement with the city and then your
Right.
permit. Yeah,
The
that's,
difference is the franchise agreement is a legislative process and the permit is an administrative process.
administrative.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be easier.
All right, so you're against the franchise then?
Yeah.
Okay,
For the
That's what-
proposed charter amendment.
right, okay,
There you go. You got it.
okay.
Okay. Anyone else want to make comments on this one?
Motion to approve the change?
We didn't make a change on it.
Oh, I thought you struck out.
On 1105, no, that, you're wanting to, you want to,
Well, I thought that's what he wanted, was to strike that out, so you won't have to pay the franchise fee. And go to the permit process.
But it's as is at the moment, just as
okay.
is.
it's, everything is currently as is, so.
Got it.
All right. That's it. So we can vote on the entire thing. It will come back on the 14th. And if it passes, if it doesn't, then it won't. And we'll be done with it. So it's up to us. I'm gonna,
Maybe we have some language.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
we have some language.
you wanted to amend the first, the public hearing, for, 72 hours for the Open Meetings Act
I have new ballot language. I can have it for the next second reading,
for second reading.
unless you want to vote on it now, but you're going to a second reading anyway.
Whatever you think is easiest. Let's just vote on it now.
Yeah, one less thing. Okay, so the proposed new language for The proposition related to the change in section 3.07 of the city charter is as follows. Shall Article 3, Section 3.07 of the city charter be amended to delete the requirement that members of the council shall receive no less than 12 hours notice of a special meeting, and instead state law will control when the city council receives notice of a special meeting which is not less than 72 hours.
Okay, I make a motion that we change it to that, what Paige just read. All right, is there any further discussion on that amendment motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay?
Motion carries 6-1. All right. I'm in a motion that we approve and we move this thing forward to second reading. This is the vote motion on the entire item.
And so when we vote on this, we're not going to vote individually on each amendment. We're going to
No.
vote on it entirely.
In its entirety at this point in time. And we'll take additional votes. We will address the compensation one again and at a later date. So if you want to vote against the whole thing and it dies, that's, quite honestly, that's fine with me at this point. So I'm just bringing forward the ideas I think made sense to me. So, all right, it's been a motion by the mayor. It's been seconded by Councilmember Fogley. Is there any further discussion on the motion? We'll do a roll call vote.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Villalobos,
Aye.
Tenorio,
Nay?
Arabi,
Aye.
Fogley,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Shield.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-1. Leave her up to city manager. Nope, we still have consider and take possible, agenda item number 18, consider and take possible action to approve an estimated amount of $10,337.52 for election services in accordance with the approved contract with Hayes
Mr.
County.
Mayor, motion to approve.
It's been motioned.
Second.
It's
I
been-
actually had a question I wanted
I
to
mean,
Second.
you can
Yeah.
talk about it.
Go ahead.
I know that, so the hot topic has been paper ballots. Travis County just approved, in their budget, the ability to have paper ballots for their upcoming election. The fact that there have been mistakes that have been revealed, with some of the issues with, the data hard drives with the electronic ballots. I would like to know, and I know this is we contract with Hayes County for elections, but I would just like to know what the cost would be if we were to request paper ballots.
Question.
Because of that is an issue. There are candidates in San Marcos that were very close or could have won their election during the last go-around. And also, we have candidates actually up here where there was actually a mistake on the ballot box for that district. And I think that some of the voters need that peace of mind. So I think it's at least worth exploring, so. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I believe in the paper supplies, I know there's contested ballots, which are paper, and you can also do elected. So there should be paper ballots within the supply packet, if I'm correct. I mean, that's the way, whenever I ran elections, those were there, so.
Can we ask Ms. Pennycrook? She's run the elections for quite some time.
There's no paper ballots anymore? Okay, I remember. Provisional, sorry. Yeah.
So I would actually like to know what the cost would be before I actually vote on this. Or at least postpone, if possible.
Does it come back for a second reading?
No, it's not a first reading. Statutorily,
think
can
so.
we wait until the,
Next Tuesday?
I believe so,
The
because
next
this
meeting.
actually, this item is not gonna come for payment until the election itself.
It's fine,
And so
I rescind my motion.
okay, all right. We're just gonna table number 18 then for now. Next up, city manager's report.
Mayor, I'm not going to insult y'all's intelligence. You can read the bullet point items, but most importantly, we wanted to remind the council that we do have a special council meeting a week from tonight that is required for the budget. Because of that, the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting would be next week on Tuesday. They have rescheduled that for Thursday, so that way the room is available. And then I gave most of the update on the Sunset Hills issue that the citizens of Amberwood were asking that we look into. Whenever the council left for executive session, I went back and spoke to those citizens a little bit more, and they're going to communicate through Nextdoor to try and identify anyone that may still be having issues, and then have those folks sent to the city, so that way we'll be aware if they have anything we need to go inspect, or we need to have the foreman out to come look at. So hopefully we'll be giving them good service in that regard, in addition to the other things that we've already done. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
I do. So just so I can help too with that process, is there a particular department or person that you would suggest? Anyone that has any?
So yes, council member, if citizens reach out to you with concerns, I would refer them to Leon Barba. Kathy Roker is our stormwater management person, and she is the one that's been predominantly meeting with the folks in the field to deal with the dust issues and the other complaints, because they are stormwater related. But the things that don't fall under her purview would fall under Public Works, so our Public Work inspectors are out there also. But it'd be great if we just coordinate that through the city engineer's office.
Councilmember Tenorio. Second. All right, it's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, we're adjourned.